DSL The Future. Well, great. Now you know. It's a digital subscriber line. We can take our telephone line and plug it into the modem and get actual internet. It's actually the future. Great. Any pass. So, I guess you have no question on that because I hear something while ignoring them. So, DSL in the context in which I am talking about today is a domain-specific language. DSL is essentially some type of language that we as programmers define that essentially allows us to interact in one specific domain. So if you watch on the screen, I have venti, half cap, no foam, latte with whip. That's kind of example of a DSL for ordering Starbucks. So essentially it's very specific language designed for one specific domain, and in that case, ordering coffee. The other one is scattered, smothered, uncovered. I think that's something to do with some place in the States. I can't remember what it is. So I just put that there. Or Waffle House, I think it is. So essentially a specialized mini language. So let's talk about the types of DSLs. So we have external DSLs, internal DSLs, and graphical DSLs. So all which I'll try and talk about now. So, anyway, so essentially external DSLs have their own custom syntax, and you need to write a parser essentially to process them yourself. So anybody could like think of any ideas of external DSLs in the world? Not everybody answer at the same time, please. No, in the world of development rather.
Could you repeat the question, please, sir?
I was asking if anybody could give me an example of an external DSL. Anything that you could think of that is an external DSL. Essentially, a specific custom syntax that have its own parsing and separate from any type of host language. So,
I just suggested a double DSL, boy. Triple everything with slides.
I don't know. Oh, nice.
That was a joke. It was not to be interrupted.
He said specifically to interrupt him because he's not reading this.
I'm not reading.
So,
It's fine.
so
And it's fine if you
people
do.
need to
I'm okay with that. Owen raising his hand right now. I guess I missed out some information I should have told you before. But anyway, Owen, go ahead. That our out of office notifications, yes, is a DSL, right?
So you're not hearing any call.
Yeah. His machine is restarted. So he suggested that our out of office notation, yeah, that is a DSL because it's very specific to essentially leaving mail on it. But I was talking specifically in programming paradigm. No? And yeah, okay. Since people not talking and they typing, I'm ignoring you.
Oh, so, like Scala and Unix and thing, man.
Sorry? Yeah. You run this ever?
Yeah, like Unix shell scripts and them kind of thing, man.
Yeah, well, good stuff, man.
And like Scala and stuff like that. Is it not? Like
I know the name Scala. I'm not familiar with it, to be honest. So you're probably right.
That language, but that's not DSL.
Yeah, well, I guess the structure of Scala, right? Isn't it? Isn't it like you declare your own syntax for Scala, right? That's not how it works.
As I said, I will take your word for it, Aaron. I believe you. I don't know. Right. So, Owen have one, right? It's interesting that Owen said QuikWorx. It's very interesting that he said that. So anyway, I'll continue. Anybody else breathing any mic, or is it me? Right?
It was Aaron.
Oh, Aaron, good job. So the first one kind of came to mind was regular expressions. So regular expressions, I hope everybody know what regular expressions are. Essentially a syntax for finding strings, substrings essentially within strings. So that's one example. I think I forgot to include the difference between general purpose programming language and a DSL. I think I should have done that first, but I cannot, did the presentation in a rush. So a general purpose programming language is like, C#, Java, or what have you, and that gives us a lot of leeway to build any kind of solutions that we want. So we can define programs that solve a myriad of problems. However, the difference with a DSL is very specific to one problem domain. As example, in the regular expression domain, it's dealing with strings and parsing strings. Cool. So I have a list of other external DSLs here. So you'd have a magical regex CSS. You could think of as a DSL as well, because we define in this very specific styling language. We have SQL and have XML configuration files, which kind of people go overboard with it sometimes, but you know, that is. Akash laughing a little bit because I guess he's seeing the QWC row, vehicle, and end row. So some people may be familiar with what that is. Right now in Andromeda, we're using some special notation, where you call it a DSL in this instance, to define how the form should be laid out. So essentially, in the designer, you drag on a label and you name it QW-row, and you put an end row, and when we publish the workflow, you'll get a particular style for the contents within it. The other thing here I have is a user form. So imagine we wanted to build forms, and we want a very easy way to define the structure of the form. We could define it, if you look at it at the bottom left-hand corner. We could essentially give the form a name and then put the fields after the type of fields, and if a label if we wanted it to be there. So that's just some examples of external DSLs. So any questions so far?
Why we don't have that QWC row in real life?
Why don't we? But we do.
Well, I mean, in extension QuikWorx normal. It sounds great.
Yeah, so we're gonna get that in QuikWorks shortly, and likely it wouldn't be that. It might be a type of field that you drag on, similar to repeater. That'll give you the functionality. So we chose to use a DSL type thing because it will be quick and easy for us to get started. Wicked. Oh, cool. All right, so let me keep going. So the other one, they have internal DSLs. So essentially, internal DSL using, I remember I spoke about a general purpose programming language. So internal DSL uses the structures and the syntax of the host language to essentially allow us to define some sort of configuration or some sort of structure that is kind of separate from the language. Well, not separate, but essentially for the specific domain. So this kind of popularized because of languages like Ruby and Lisp and stuff like that have a loose syntax that allows us to define our own code very loosely. So the example is the black one at the bottom. It's like with employee this do these things. So it's very, very loose, and that probably some people could understand. The other two I have on the screen is actually no, it's the black area is Ruby. Right. The other two is actually from C# and .NET. The first one on top, which is from V in vendors. Hopefully people should be familiar with it. That's the actually link query language. So you can actually write link queries like this. I don't know how many people use it though. The other one is actually link again, but the thing I wanted to demonstrate there would have been the Fluent API. So by doing a Fluent API, it's a lot easier for us to understand. It's a lot easier for people to understand. So you want vendors wear this and then order it by that. It's a lot clearer than writing a whole set of for loops and that kind of thing. So with internal DSLs, you essentially have to build a whole set of code in the background to give essentially a API that is very friendly to an end user. So that was it. Any questions on that? Great. So the other one is graphical DSLs. And I put QuikWorx, and I was like, maybe it is, maybe it isn't. And Erwin suggested that it might be. So that's what we're doing. We actually allowing people to specify outside of code how do we want to structure this workflow and that kind of thing. And Akash will probably laugh at me, but after a while, everything you see is a DSL. So it might be true, it might not be true, but after a while, everything you come across is DSL. Our web config is DSL. Some text I input in our CSV is DSL.
Does this have roots in linguistics?
It's interesting that you said that, but it does not necessarily have roots in linguistic, but more roots in parsing configuration data, I believe. But it's a good thought. I like where you're going, but we will get there soon. So, we just want to know why.
The letter Y.
We want to know why we want to do this. So, tailored to a particular domain, so it's very specific. So, for example, when we order in our Starbucks or we send in our out of office mail, it's concise and they know what we want to do. It's very easy to use. The other thing it allows communication with experts. So just a point on that. So I think the thing everybody wants is that the non-technical people will write essentially code in the DSL, which would be like the regular expressions, or well, not necessarily, but the rules in the thing. So if I just head back to the user form, for example, we would want, the goal people want is that a non-technical person to write this configuration. But the truth is that might not really happen, but at least a non-technical person could probably read this and understand that this is going to be a form named user form, and you're going to have 3 fields on it. So like any of the analyst guys, you could tell me if you could understand that at least and visualize what is the end result is going to be.
Yep.
Yeah, great. So that's the goal. It might not happen in real life, but at least you can have communication.
I didn't hear analyst guy respond. Sorry, I just came on. But what was supposed to interpret to see if we understand?
The bottom left-hand corner, user form. So essentially, this is a domain-specific language to generate a HTML form, basically. I was saying, well, it's clear that you could see there's 3 fields on the form and different types. Yeah.
Okay.
Hey, Anand.
Yeah.
Does a DSL kind of represent the person who, not person, but the community that has built a DSL? Does it represent to a degree? In other words, can the DSL provide a sense of stability for all concerned, in the sense that because you have a DSL, it says something about the maturity or the nature of the people using the DSL. In other words, can you have a DSL in an immature thought community or thought context?
Yeah, definitely. We use DSLs all the time, and it's only I writing it. So it's not necessary that it's in a wider context. It could be very specific for me to read files and I'll have my code interpreted in any manner that I want. However, DSLs that are widely adopted, like regular expressions and SQL and CSS, there's a big community around them. So the last thing I had is change is cheap. So sorry, somebody had a question?
Yeah, that's Ryan. You mentioned that SQL itself was a DSL.
Yeah, basically. Well, that's how I see it.
So, what's the
because
difference
it's
between a 4GL and a DSL?
Sorry?
What's the difference between a 4GL and a DSL?
I can't remember what 4GL is, 4th generation language, but I can't remember the specifics of it. So what I could tell you the difference between general purpose programming language like C# and Java that gives you flexibility to do any kind of coding, as opposed to DSL, which is very specific to a problem domain, such as querying SQL. And in that regard, SQL is every bit as much as DSL. So I can't recall the definition of a fourth generation language,
Yeah,
it might be the same.
Yeah, I
It
know
might
hung up about it, but I remember, I think I recall the dream of 4GL languages and things like DSLs was so that the experts, as you mentioned,
Mhm.
in the field would be able to do their quote unquote programming by themselves without having
Yeah.
to translate something to a coder and the coder having to write that in some way that a machine could understand,
Right.
etc.
Yeah.
So you
exactly.
skip a step, right? But I mean, I don't know if they have better examples, but like SQL was made and COBOL was made for those subject matter experts to do these things, and it turns out that they weren't able to. Or
Right.
these
But I thought,
languages weren't successful at allowing them to do that.
but I felt like
So
I addressed
but
that
now,
point. I felt like I addressed that point with the communication with experts point that that was the goal, but it's not in reality. As I said, it's not real. But at least somebody could look at it and understand maybe
oh, okay,
the
okay,
flow of logic.
take it,
So
read it, but not necessarily write it.
not necessarily right. So actually doing it research on this, I think Martin Fowler was talking about some guy in the 70s suggesting that a housewife could use SQL to find out some order, some set of information. Essentially saying a housewife would be able to use SQL. I mean, to me, like it have people in here like myself who suck at SQL, even though I might be on that SQL Server user group committee. I could write basic SQL, but I can't write. I have to Google every time I have to write a SQL statement. So it's just funny in that regard.
Doesn't every chatbot essentially propose its own DSL? In other words, every time you make a chatbot, aren't you making a DSL? Because once the chatbot is made, it's a frozen language, isn't it?
When you make valid points, I like the way your mind thinks. It's wonderful. We should probably look at getting into that sometime in the future. It's very interesting that you put it that way.
Cool scene.
So the other things is, as in like, why not, I would say, upfront investment. So essentially you have to build the DSL. And you wouldn't have IDE support unless you make it. And again, that's a lot of cost. So I'm just gonna do that. So the next thing is just, we will just do the dance and show the demo. Okay, just do a little demo. So, so the demo includes essentially building dynamic field behavior for QuikWorx. This is have nothing. The sample I did have nothing to do with QuikWorx. Just the upstairs people don't get excited.
We are already excited.
I understand, but it's very simple. And have nothing to do with QuikWorks at the moment. It's completely separate, and essentially we're gonna hide and show fields based on particular conditions. And we're gonna use a DSL to define the rules that govern the visibility of fields. So we could see in the future we could have hide and show fields, required fields. They could be required based on conditions, as well as I don't know, whatever else you could imagine the behavior of a field. So we're going to have to be able to use constant values like, the value 10 or the value of a field on the form. And we want a very simple language to describe the rule. So let me take it away. Hopefully I could find the demo. Okay.
Should I sing intro music in the meantime?
No, I don't think you need to, because you guys see my screen?
Yep.
Okay, great.
Should I know on the music?
I don't think I need it. So this is my magical field behavior form. Let me see, I have two.
Richard have a question there first, right?
Well, you could speak.
Well, I wanted to ask Akash if the Excel functions thing that he built was a DSL.
Yeah, I think I didn't actually. I don't think they hear you, Akash.
The answer is yes.
Yeah, so yeah, definitely. I think I wanted to include that on the the examples, but yeah, Excel, the language in Excel is definitely a DSL. It's very specific for formulas.
He
And
talking about inside the Excel, or I think he's talking about
well,
something
no,
else.
it's the same. It's the same language that he used. So he used the Excel DSL, but he implemented it in some forms on QuikWorks, basically.
They were
So,
amazing.
yeah, but he never used it. So how are you feeling now, man?
Can we not talk about that right now?
All right, I apologize. I apologize. So this is some form in QuikWorks or PowerWorks at the moment. And this guy said to type here and behold. So I'm just going to type this, man. Hopefully it works. If it doesn't, so I have this in my. This is my. You can imagine, when somebody designing a workflow, they're gonna and they say, well, I want to add rules to change the things on the form. I'm gonna add this rule, and I'm just gonna type hide the model when the hide the field when this other field is equal to X or Y.
Beautiful.
Right? So we're just gonna hit enter, and well, it didn't work because it's not 2, right? So I'm just gonna change it to 2. Run it again, and boom, magic. The wherever field I was, the model field disappeared.
Very cool.
Yeah, so I could provide. So I guess I could provide a different one. So I'll use 1. I'll hit enter again, and it disappears. So that's the value here, 1. So I did it was very limited. It only deals with checking numbers at this time. I believe you could say, let me reset this. So I could type hide service when, let me see, if I could say if hide service if mileage is more than
7.
Okay, 7. Just trying to check and see if I cheated or Pete.
Yeah.
Okay, so 7, and obviously it doesn't work now. Thanks, Peter. So I don't
Got
know.
him.
Yeah, it works now. I had to put in that too. So let me see if I put in more than. Yeah. So I had to put in more than 7.
Not real bad though. Why it wasn't so slow? But real bad though.
What?
Like the animation move like a little slow there, but
Yeah, because the animation on the thing, it says slow.
Oh, slow, real slow, right?
Literally.
bad than life itself.
Yeah.
Not real bad though. We need this like now, boy. So I think, man.
So plenty people speaking, I can't hear. So Pete,
When we could get this in product.
this is, as I said before, this is not real. It's the magic. So it's gonna take some
the code,
time.
though.
Yes, we will get to the code now. Owen, you can. Yeah, Owen, you were saying things. I'm not hearing you very clearly.
Nobody here in the window. That's
I know.
what they're showing. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm hearing
they're
you.
showing.
I'm not sure if you hear me because Justin talking over.
Yes, we are hearing you
Yeah,
now.
yeah, no.
Mm-hmm.
The thing that jumps out at me is when you have a DSL, because it is specific, you could do things like spelling, like when you spell things poorly, you could do
Yes,
things
every day.
like like because somebody could probably type something out, for example. They don't always have to type, but in this case they're typing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because there's a limited list of commands, you could build your own
IntelliSense.
IntelliSense. Wow, Justin. Build your own IntelliSense for your DSL. And so you're avoiding spelling mistakes that will throw your thing off, for example. And you're helping the user actually learn the language.
So that's definitely a option. Of course, again, it's upfront cost in doing that. I think Niall was talking about that this morning. That's what he wanted for some feature. I can't be sure. I don't know if you
nice drag and drop blocks, bang.
Yeah, so I mean, all those things we could do, but I mean, the typing was just to show the example. It's quick, easy, and you don't have to build a UI to drag and drop things. You can just type. Of course, the thing could be a little less verbose if you want it to be. It's all up to you. So that's that. I guess I could show you how I built it now, right? So to build a DSL is awesome. So this is how I would build a DSL normally. I'll take my input, pass it through a tokenizer. That guy will break up the string into its parts, and then I'll have some magical parsing guy to create a data structure that lines up with this data, and then I'll pass it to the behavior engine to execute whatever code you want to run based on that generated data structure. So that's like one way to build a DSL. However, I didn't do that. Yeah, everybody else hearing me? Yeah, everybody else hearing me fine. So
Yeah, how you doing?
So I actually did it by magic. Right? I cheated, and Owen was happy and annoyed. So essentially, I use Lewis. That's Microsoft Natural Language Processing
Nice.
engine guy. I created a Lewis application and essentially calls it every time I type. So I guess I could show you the application a little bit. Well, the Lewis application. So tell me when you see it. So I'll have this intent. You guys would be kind of familiar with it, right? Because I know.
Yeah, when we were doing bots.
Yes. So instead of doing an AI robot, I chose to use it in a different manner, which is to process my DSL without me having to write all that parser thing and do an internal DSL using Ruby or something like that, or plain text. So this is what I have here. So essentially I have simple things, simple utterances. So that defines my language. So you can say hide the field if, or hide the field when, and then you could say greater than or equal to, for example, in this manner. So that's basically what the Lewis part of it is. So essentially, after you publish your Lewis app, you get a URL that you would be able to query you'll be able to query from. So I'll just take a look, show you guys my code here. Let me see. I guess I can start here. So let me bring up Lewis here. So essentially, when I type this, well, it's reset every time I hit enter. So that's why you see the thing problem. So I'll just get rid of it. So I'm gonna just show you. Essentially, this is the content returned from Lewis. So it told me that this is the top scoring intent. So essentially, this is the intent that I should direct my query to, as well as essentially the entities that it parsed out. Essentially, playing the role of the parser in my DSL. So essentially, you see here, I have the value as 7. I have the lookup field as mileage. So essentially, we want to get the value from mileage. The operator is more than, and the field name is service. So that's essentially the response I get when I call the Lewis API.
I have a question.
Sure.
Is it say for example we put hide distance when whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Would Lewis know that distance refers to mileage? And
no, not well. It can if you train it in a particular way, but I did not do that. So I could probably defer to Irwin to answer your question. It likely can, but I wouldn't know at this point. Good.
Yeah, pretty much it can, and as Anand kind of suggested, it points to training. But to make the thing transparent, you might want that the person defining the field called mileage perhaps include some synonyms, or we might actually build in synonym support for common things. So that's how you would get that resolving the way you want it to resolve.
Okay, I was asking because I was wondering if perhaps so I might use the wrong terms, but perhaps the DSL already knows synonyms and just replaces it without having to train.
So at this moment, so the issue with that is the DSL is specific to the domain of hiding and showing fields, right?
Okay.
what the field names are have nothing to do with the DSL. That what the field names are or what synonyms are related to the field names, that's completely different from what the DSL does. The DSL is very specific. Hide this field when this condition is met. If you want that feature, that you see, because because I use the chatbot, it kind of bringing your mind closer to interactive chatting experience, and that's not what this is intended to be. This is intended to be very specific, very concise type of language. Yeah. So there's no benefit to me allowing that because the name of the field is mileage. I'm just let it be. Yeah.
Yep.
All right. Cool. So get back to the code. So this is basically the code here for it. It's very simple. So what I did essentially when I get the response saying hide it is the intent. I'm gonna essentially grab the entity values that I get back, and you guys, I don't know if everybody know about this cool thing. Essentially, you could provide a case-insensitive lookup in attributes for jQuery. So if I don't know if you noticed, but I type mileage and the name of the field is actually capital M, and it search mileage and it actually it did the deed. You could provide this I here. I don't know what the star is, but I'll put it. So you can actually do case intensive searching in jQuery, which is kind of cool. So yeah, that's it. So essentially, I get the value to look up. I have this operator functions guy, which is kind of simple thing. I'll show you guys how it looks. I don't know where it went. I may have deleted it in error. Yeah, so I have this operator functions guy, and essentially simply taking the text that the people enter, comparing it to the value, and essentially returning a true or false value. So for the more than, it does the same thing. It just does the more than thing. So if we needed to implement a contains method, for example, I could put contains and then write a function to kind of figure that out. So we could do any type of functions that we want, any type of language structures that we want. So that's that. So we have, so essentially look up, find the function that matches the operator, which might be equal or more than, and then I pass it the lookup value, which is the field value, and the static value or constant value that I send. And again, it's really simple. I just say, well, if you want to hide it, and then I put this for you here. Right? This is where I put this slow. So yeah, that's basically it. So I guess if you want, I guess you guys could take a run around with it on Azure. I'll post it in the chat that I was ignoring. Ryan, were you spell checking me or? I don't know. I see a thing there. I may have spelled it wrong. Right?
Yeah, you a side boo boo, right? But it's alright. We understand.
I spelled it wrong? That's great. That's all my intention. So you guys could play around with that if you want.
Reports. We have any reports?
What? No, this is not related to anything. Mama.
The man say click it, but Aka say click it.
Oh, Aka said click it. No, that's a different application. If you want, I could send you that to see what it looks like when. I just stole the skin from an X application to just for the demo.
Go click the thing now, boy.
So Smooth, what interfaces is this that we see on screen now? This is for PowerWorks?
Currently, yeah. Currently, this is what PowerWorks looks like. But this is not the PowerWorks application. I just stole the skin and put the thing here.
Oh, right. So, why QW don't look like that?
Sorry?
I was just wondering why QW doesn't look like more like this in terms of the polish and the cleanness of it.
Well, just for the people involved, I stole this off the internet. It took me about 15 minutes to convert a vanilla application to look like this. So
What about the reports by if you click on reports?
okay. Hold on, let me get the URL. Akash, let me see. Look. I guess people want to see the power, the thing, man. I don't know why, man. I don't know why I want to see it, but I have no real reports again, even in the actual application, man. So any questions related to this guy? How about that?
When we could get that many question?
Nah, you can't get that just so. So all this is an implementation of a particular feature, right? So it's an idea. Well, maybe when I'm building the designer, for example, like Niall, and I need to put configuration information for fields that show up on the designer, I could use a DSL to minimize. If I want to add a new field, Justin could go and add a new field type maybe by typing some language in some file, and boom, magically the field will appear on the screen. So this have nothing to do with when you could get that. Is when you want a feature, you need to look at, well, what we need to get done and what's the best way we could do it. So that.
But in the context of us producing some solution, and there may be applications we could use something like that to implement a business rule, let's say, on a form, and not have to rely on a dev to do it.
Yeah, well, so that's the intent, right? That's the intent, is to implement business rules and have it separate from the system where we can modify it and communicate to the experts, like, hey, this is what we're gonna do. Maybe they could write it, maybe not. It's unlikely, but at least we can get it done.
Yeah, so when I asked the question when we could get is in the context of that feature then. But I guess you were not really talking, so.
Yeah, I don't know. I can't answer that question at all.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
I have another question. When Akash did the Excel functions, there was a discussion around it being client side versus server side. This one and the client side seems to be less secure for some reason. This one is a server side implementation.
So really unusual questions. I don't. It is both. Client and server. In terms of.
But
I don't see how it's insecure to have the stuff on the client side.
What's the architecture for that? As in, is it really cloud side since it's using Lewis? Do people make a differentiation between stuff like that?
That's a different question to my question.
Oh, sorry.
The thing that the discussion was, so the Excel functions, you build the function into the QuikWorx form. So like if this was greater than that, this field could return a word or something. But it being client side, it was almost as though somebody could inject some script into the form and it breaks it.
I don't think that's a concern, because right now, whether it's stuff on the client or the server, somebody could still inject some script and change the form. So that's not really a concern. That's just an understanding that you can change things on the client, but only certain types of individuals can do that, and we need to have things on the server in place to ensure that the data that we receive is valid. So whether or not things are done on the client or on the server, it doesn't matter. Our code needs to essentially validate when we receive requests from the client.
Okay.
So, I think that is it. So just some thoughts on where these things come from. That one book that I told you guys to read last week, and CNAT had a magical presentation on it. Again, it's available on my ShareWS020/book. books, and you find some cool books there as well. Some guy called Martin Fowler. I think he's important. I'm not sure what he does. A guy called Ayende Raheen. I don't know. I think that's not even his name, but you can search him if you want. The idea for the using the bot to do the DSL was mine, so I put my name up there. And yes, Owen, I know you had the same idea basically during the presentation. So it's cool that looking at it, we could kind of come up with cool newish ideas. Maybe even if they're not original, but at least they're new to us.
So Smooth's the new Batman?
I like bots and I cannot lie, but not related to robots though.
Wow.
Yeah. And Google, Google helps everyone. So that's it for me. I'll just put back this guy because I find it cool. Yeah, that's it.
Justin, you didn't have to question.
I just before you go, Anand, I think just the understanding that we could. There's something about DSL that I think it's escaping me right now, but it looks like it's a bigger deal than when you understand something, but you don't really understand it, and when you understand it more, it will reveal a lot.
Yeah,
that's how I feel about DSL right now.
Okay, great. Well, that's good. That just means that we could explore it a little more, do some research, implement some, and get feedback and see where we can use it and where we shouldn't. Because obviously there are places where we shouldn't, but I think it's a good thing. Somebody was saying Justin had something to say. No.
So for example, sorry guys, sorry. So for example, right, QuikWorx is not just a DSL. If we allow that QuikWorx essentially provides a DSL for us to deliver solutions to people, but it may be just like the thing with the bot. With the bot, when you create a chatbot, you are putting a DSL down. You're capturing some language that people will use to get things done. When you, as a consultant, you go into someone and you they teach them what QuikWorx is, it's almost as if we are teaching them via QuikWorx how to discover their own DSL. So what they get when they get a solution from QuikWorx is a distillation of a particular language their community speaks. So a well-done QuikWorx solution will be a DSL. In other words, the solution itself is a DSL. And if we could take the solution as a DSL and make it an input for something else, some other engine, or see the QuikWorx engine as a processor of a DSL, then I think that's a big deal. But so that's a little more ideas of how cool this thing really is to me.
Yeah, I kind of understand where you're getting on the fact that, well, we're giving them a tool to essentially design their own DSL, to describe their domain in a very specific language of stages and decisions. So it's a cool idea. I mean, again, the only issue is everything you see now will be a DSL. So, like, you'll see DSLs everywhere, but that's okay. When I buy a Subaru, I see all these Subarus everywhere I went, man. Never before. Anyway, that's it. Anybody else have any questions? All right. I hope you guys had fun. Pieces.